All right. Hello. Is this thing on? Let's see. Unfortunately, seem to have some technical difficulties. Let's see. Okay, let's do this. Hello, this is your average Joe coming at you live with a happy St. Patrick's Day. How are you, General Degenerates, doing? Hello, Bob. How are you? Um, so wanted to go ahead and first of all wish you all a happy St. Patrick's Day, as well as apologize. I was not available earlier this weekend. I had some other things going on that unfortunately interfered with me being able to really interact with the community this weekend. But in any case, I wanted to go ahead and discuss some things that I feel are worth talking about. And that really comes down to the concept of we've had some crazy things happen this week, such as Christchurch, which I think that horse has been pretty thoroughly beaten by this point. But I did want to go ahead and beat on it a little bit more with concerns and also a very interesting little moment with Nancy Pelosi advocating for complete regression of voting rights, and actually, really, what the implications of that could possibly be. So, to go ahead and get this started, then, really, when it comes to Christchurch, my concerns come with, first of all, it is a absolutely horrific event. It's never good to see something like that happen. There's no point where I could possibly condone such an action. And really, in all honesty, I do hope that this doesn't happen again, but I'm also going to say in a realistic fashion, this is only the first. So, and the reason why I say that comes from the very concept of it being as successful as it's been. And it goes into the killer's manifesto, which I know that MGTOW Values has discussed. I know that I do believe that not Happy Humble Hermit. It was Hammerhand discussed it as well, and there was a few others that went ahead and went over it. But really, what it comes into play with is the open honesty of the goals of the attack, and that is in and of itself it's horrifying, but that's at the same time there's a certain comedy to it. And I say there's a comedy to it in the fact that he was for the first time in a very long time, and actually I think this is the first time ever, he was very open and honest with exactly what he was hoping to get out of the attack, including even explaining the reason why he name dropped specific individuals such as Candace Owens and PewDiePie. And it was his hope that essentially this would create a backlash that would cause these individuals to be deplatformed and or attacked by our wonderful regressive, I want to say friends, but even in a sarcastic tone that wouldn't be very fitting, our regressive, I don't know, they're like really fucked up cousins. And you know what, Bob, you actually put it in there. Exactly it. CNN blames Trump and white men. And that's exactly what the manifesto wanted. The manifesto specifically states that he wanted an actual attack. He wanted an attack on men. He wanted an attack on specifically white men. He wanted all of these mainstream media outlets to double down and continue their assault and actually use this to attempt to actually put laws into place that would systemically attack things like gun laws, speech laws. He even wanted this to go so far as to further the feminist drive into attacking relationships. And I know he didn't specifically say it, but as a connotation in his manifesto, he wanted this to essentially actually cause an overdrive in family courts to use this as a reason why men could not be reasonable parents, reasonable fathers, that this would be something that would carry on and essentially be used to continue the unabated assault on men and boys. Now, the thing I find absolutely fascinating about this is 30 minutes after the attack happened, 30 minutes, we immediately got tweets, we immediately got screenshots, we got reposts, we got memes, we got these things that, and I say memes in the context of it's people looking at this going, are you serious? Here's a picture of the manifesto explaining exactly what he wants, and here's a picture of a tweet given by, Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, these other media outlets doing exactly to a T what this individual wanted, what this man wanted. And I say that being extremely loose in the context of I do not believe that a man would be as cowardly to do something like this. There's every other opportunity to get your message out there, to promote a difference, and even so, live your life in such a manner that it means more than just being a killer. Yes, no sheep got killed, and honestly, it's something else that I wanted to discuss in a little bit was the actual validity of the attack, because I saw that Misandry today put out a video and he was discussing whether or not it was a false flag, because he referenced the fact that there was actually some social media posts that came out about the attack before the attack occurred, and whether or not this is actually valid, because in the wake of this attack, there still have been, as far as I do know, no names released of any of the individuals who were killed in the attack. There's no pictures, there's no names. These people died, if they did do so, and they are faceless, they are nameless, and yet we know our killer. I do not know his name personally, but yet we know his face, we know his motives, we know his manifesto, we know what he wanted to do with this, and yet we do not know who any of the victims possibly are. Now, when this comes into play, the context of this being, I apologize about the dogs in the background. 1 second. All right, I do apologize about that. I am back now. The wonders of living with 4 dogs and noisy neighbors. Yes, dog meat. But in essence, really what it comes down to is in play with the context of what the killer wanted, the manifesto. And these people are falling tooth, line, or hook, line, and sinker for it. Yes, tooth, line, and sinker. This is a new thing. We use teeth now. But hook, line, and sinker for this. I mean, it's just utter insanity. There's this I mean, it is, and it's insanity to have a blatant, open document that perfectly prescribes in complete honesty exactly what you're hoping to happen as a result of the attack, and these individuals, against any line of logic or reason, do exactly what this individual wanted. For example, New Zealand is now pushing heavy anti-gun laws, and in fact, I find it very interesting that they even had the bill already ready to go. And I say that in the context of it's not just announcing that they're going to pass more gun laws. They pushed forward a bill ready to be used in case something like this happened. And I say in case like this happened because I'm being a little bit cautious here in saying, or possibly, going along with a conjecture of the very context of this being an inside job, but it does beg the question based upon the context of the attack and the political responses here, whether or not they actually had prior knowledge of whether or not this attack would happen. And based upon, again, the conjecture here under the assumption that they had knowledge of this attack, that they willfully let it go, expecting it to be as successful as it was, knowing full well the full consequences of it, so that way they would have a political platform and be able to use to further prescribe attacks on men, civil citizens' rights, and really honestly to further deplatform any kind of alternative message to the regressive left-wing concept. I really do think that this should be getting a lot of people to have questions right now, and you should be questioning whether or not they had knowledge of this based upon how quickly they were capable of moving to try and pass legislation and attack legislation based upon the context of the attack. Bob, it's really sad you have CNN viewers who think Smollett got attacked by 2 white MAGA race people, and and that's exactly the thing. CNN has not actually talked. They talked about the killer having a manifesto. They haven't talked about his manifesto specifically. And I've actually I've seen the thread that the manifesto was on with Reddit. I'm not sure if it's still up or not, due to how Reddit's been rather liberally taking threads down now. But there was a few people that were actually trying to show other individuals on Reddit that this was not only just premeditated, but it is very highly possible that these governments actually knew about the attack prior to it happening. Because as I said, that's a very quick response for a political entity. I mean, and here's the thing, we're going to disregard AOC right now because she's quick to jump on anything that she thinks is worth talking about. I don't think she has a filter between her and her thumbs. However, it really goes to show that there's a definite plan here. And I do say that knowing full well what I am really inciting here, and that is, I do believe that this attack was not only just premeditated on the behalf of the attacker, but I do believe that there were government agencies and intelligence agencies that knew full goddamn well what was going to happen and let it go. I do not believe that this is any different than Parkland. I do not believe this is any different than Sandy Hook. And in fact, I actually would say that this is very closely related to the concept of Sandy Hook, and the fact that this is not, this attack, again, there is absolutely no footage whatsoever of any people actually being in that mosque. In fact, I have not seen any footage about any ambulances around the mosque, any police cars around the mosque, any response to this attack. And I find that very interesting because as I just mentioned, Parkland, we watched with Parkland, there is footage of the school being surrounded by police units actively looking to find the attacker. Whereas we find in this scenario, similar to Sandy Hook, there's either A, no response, or B, a large lack thereof. And honestly, really, it doesn't even matter what the purpose of the attack was or whether or not it was really real. What matters is the fact that the response has garnered exactly what the killer wanted. It is exactly down to a T what he wanted in a response. And this will result exactly in what he wanted to be in a response. Because now we have politicians in the United States, we have politicians in New Zealand, and we have politicians in other countries that are now actively looking to attack the concept of gun rights, firearms, and they're looking to attack people who use certain platforms and certain messaging. They're looking to attack 8chan. And what I found was very interesting was now there's a newly revigorated attack on incels. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the individual, the killer in this attack, if you look at his face, he is not an incel. I won't say that he's an extremely handsome man, but he is by no means a man that I would consider involuntarily celibate. He is not a man that looks as if genetics betrayed him. He looks pretty much around what I would consider an average looking man to look like. So, this revered assault on incels is very interesting in that fact because they're trying to insinuate that this was a result of sexual frustration. And what I find is very interesting is, again, going back to his manifesto, he at no point discusses the concept of him being a sexually frustrated individual. That this is not, that none of this is related to him being an involuntary celibate or him being a man who is incapable of having sex or even showing sexual frustration in this concept of not being able to get with a woman. In fact, if you look at anything that he's talking about, he really almost completely ignores what we would consider red pill content or even incel content, PUA content, or MGTOW content. Because even PUA content, under the guise of it being red pill, which my own personal opinion on it at this point is it is not red pilled. It's not even purple. It's blue. Um, it has really nothing to do with any of these communities. And as Bob just said, yes, he did mention specifically that families were pointless due to feminist policies. That they tie that to being an incel is extremely fascinating to me. I find that a very interesting attack and a very interesting shaming tactic to be used at this point. Now, really, what I find also very interesting is their attacks on PewDiePie specifically, not even Candace Owens. They're not even really pursuing Candace Owens, but they're attacking PewDiePie again. And now there's a revigorated hatred for PewDiePie and his alt-right fans. I don't know if you know this, but if you watch PewDiePie, PewDiePie is made for 9-year-olds. Like, it is that level of content. And he has at no point discussed politics. He's never once discussed red pills. He has never once discussed concepts of hating Jews or attacking Jews or even having anything that's even remotely pro-Nazi. And in fact, if anything, if you watch PewDiePie, he's just a goofball. That's his selling point. He is a meme, as exactly as Bob just said. PewDiePie is a meme. So the very fact that they would attack him is a complete knee-jerk reaction and a complete, and I mean it's complete voluntarily ignoring evidence under the guise of pursuing narrative. Now, is this something to be surprised of? Absolutely not. This is not something that we should be shocked about. But what is very interesting, and again, as I said before, and a good word for it, it's terrifying, is the context under which that they would have the answers to the exam and still manage to fail the exam. Every answer is A. I'm telling you right now, if you take the exam right now, all of the answers are A. The entire test is a multiple choice test. All you have to do is put A down the row and you will pass. And these people are putting B, C, and D, E, and marking, like, oh, and answering in short answers, and they're writing on the test. All they had to do was answer A. The answers are already there. They're right in front of you. And yet they're voluntarily ignoring this again. Because I do believe that without a shadow of a doubt, this is no longer just conjecture at this point. We now have physical proof based upon the response that we've gotten out of this that these leftist individuals, these regressive tribalist morons, want war. They want to fight. They want to drive everyone that they consider their enemy into death. They want to fight them. They want to bring it around because then they can claim a moral high ground because, well, we drove evil out. We killed evil. We slew the dragon. Not realizing they themselves are just pawns of the same creature that they think that they're fighting. But I do digress. Again, I think that I've beaten this horse thoroughly, and I know that everyone else is pretty much, that this is beyond hamburger at this point. It's been beaten pretty thoroughly, but I did want to go ahead and put that out there, that it's disheartening. It really is, to know that these individuals do have the answer, they have the answers right in front of them, and yet they openly refuse to accept what is right in front of them because it doesn't allow them to pursue their narrative. Is this something surprising? No, but in any case, I will carry on now. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the newest push to attack voting. And that is Nancy Pelosi putting out there that she wants to make 16-year-olds voters. Now, what is interesting about this, and I do say that this is interesting in the fact that it will lead to so much more than just voting, is she wants to bring the voting age down to 16 years old. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a 16-year-old, I was kind of a dumbass. And I'll come out and say that. And so far, based off of what everyone else that I've seen has posted and talked about this subject, everyone agrees when you're 16, you're pretty much a dumbass. Now, what's interesting about this particular move comes from the concept of, if you make a 16-year-old have the right and ability to vote, what you are essentially doing is you're making the new legal age for an adult 16 years old. Now, if you're going to have them have voting rights, then I argue, okay, fine. Let them have the right to drink. Let them have the right to buy a firearm. Let them have the rights to sign a loan. Let them have the right to get married, buy a house, do all these other things, because that is part of voting. Is you're an adult now. You are legally qualified as an adult. Therefore, that is the reason why you have the right to vote under the 19th and 26th Amendment. And because of this, if you're calling for a 16-year-old to vote, you're now calling for the new legal age of adulthood to be 16 years old. The last time that 16-year-olds were legally identified as adults, I do believe, was in the very early 1900s, and even actually it was a little bit before that. And it had to do with the context of what life expectancy was. And life expectancy right now has actually declined among millennials and Gen Z. The current life expectancy for millennials, I do believe, is actually roughly around the age of 85. And Gen Z, it's roughly around the age of 84 or a little bit lower than that. The reason why this matters is because if we're not expected to live as long, then that means that there's going to be certain policy changes that come into effect due to the fact that if you're recognizing adults as if you're recognizing a 16-year-old as having an individual who is capable of having voting rights, you're now recognizing them legally under the context of law as being an individual capable of being an adult. So they now have the ability to, and should, if you're having them vote, have the ability to be adults. Now, is this something that I do believe is going to happen? I'm not sure, but it does beg the question of what the actual the end goal with all of this is, because we already know the motive. The motive is, if you get 16-year-olds to vote, they will vote Democrat, they will vote socialism, they will vote communism, because these kids are by all means brainwashed. They're very heavily indoctrinated, and I even deal with right now 17 to 19-year-olds going physically to a college campus, and they are socialists. It's not even, I think socialism could be a good idea. It's socialism is the answer, period, end of story. If you have a differing opinion, you are a monster. And therefore, I am a monster. So, under this context, this is the reason why we see the Democrats attacking that they want to lower the voting age is because they know that is the only way that they can possibly garner voters now. Because even they're even beginning to lose somehow the migrant populations, because the migrant populations now are actually even now are turning more towards conservative ideals when it comes to politics, because even some of these migrants don't agree with the intersectional concepts. And what we saw also this occur with is in Britain, where you had all of these Muslim mothers, and it was specifically Muslim mothers that were protesting that their children were being taught about gay values and gay pride and gay history. And they demanded in the UK that this end, or they all go, like, they'll all leave the UK. And unfortunately, the UK buckled and removed all of their gay history. And I say unfortunately because that would have been hilarious to watch them for once stick to their guns on something. But it's created this weird intersectional dilemma. Who do you side with? The Muslims, or do you side with your LGBTQ, PUF, PDF, IDG, you know, what's the acronym up to? 20 letters now? I'm not entirely sure. However, it really comes into context here where you can't win intersectional politics when you have multiple intersectional groups attacking each other, as we've seen so far with the TERFs and the trans community going at it. And now you add into that, now the Muslim community is saying no to the LGBT community. So now they have to decide on, do we keep the Muslims or do we keep the LGBT? Furthermore, you also have individuals that are coming from especially the South America region for the United States. Well, many of them are heavily Catholic, who also disagree with LGBT. So who do you go with? Your illegal aliens, or do you go with your LGBT? Or do you just break the game and have 16-year-olds vote? Because 16-year-olds will get you everything you want, because a 16-year-old's a goddamn idiot, in a modern setting, because as compared between a 16-year-old now and a 16-year-old that was legally recognized as an adult 100 years ago, the 16-year-old that was legally recognized as an adult has already gone to funerals. They've already experienced life. Life was already going, pretty, dark for them. They've never really had a childhood, because from the age of 5 on up, you're either in a trade learning what you're doing for your job for the rest of your life, or you're being groomed for a position within your family, because that's the only way that you're going to survive in that environment. The very concept of a child having a childhood was a result of post-Second Industrial Revolution, which was the Electrical Revolution concept of removing children from the factories and factory work under the guise that children should have childhoods and education to better society. This is still it's a relatively new concept. It's less than 100 years old. It's within living memory that children were identified as individuals that had to have childhoods. Beforehand, children were expected to go to work like any other family, unless you're an aristocrat, and then you were being groomed for a position. So you didn't have a childhood, you had a training period, and then adulthood. Now, the reason why, and again, we already know the reason why they want to make these children voters, is because they will follow along full-heartedly without any kind of thought for consequence exactly everything that they're told by the Democrats, because, well, it's one, against probably what their parents are telling them, or two, they've been so thoroughly indoctrinated by their parents that they're just going to willingly throw themselves into the flames of fire and go, communism and socialism are great, right? And they'll even so much as think it's wonderful because they've never experienced anything else. So what you're systemically attempting to do then is raise generations of individuals of the new North Korean concept of people who will openly follow along with socialism and communism because they won't know anything else. The ironic thing about that, though, is that these people will still rebel against you, because at some point you're still going to have a dissatisfied population. it's incredible. It's really incredible to think that you have these individuals who actually are so short-sighted with what they wanted, or under the assumption that it is a short-sighted move. It is so short-sighted to see what the actual implications of this are. Now, this is even more of a systemic issue because we've seen just today the governor of Colorado has signed in a bill attempting to subvert the will of his constituents, in that the electoral college votes for Colorado will go to whoever wins the national popular vote. Now, I don't know about you, but I think the individuals in Colorado, under the guise of, their vote meaning something, they should have full right to vote on whichever candidate they want, not who in New York City, LA, San Francisco, and any other of the big cities in the country, whoever they vote for, because they are the major population when it comes to for population density in the United States. I do not think that the people in New York City should be the ones deciding where the Colorado Electoral College votes go. So I do hope to see that being defeated very soon in the Supreme Court, because that is as unconstitutional and absolutely just downright, it's a complete disregard for the people of Colorado, the same people who voted your dumbass in. Now, what does that speak to the people of Colorado? I don't know. I think it speaks some volume to the fact that these people would elect an individual like that into place under the guise of, well, you're going to represent me, right? And yes, I'm going to represent you. Here, let me pass a bill that will irrevocably ignore all of you, and all of our state's power when it comes to the presidential elections are going to go to whoever the populist vote goes to. Okay, so let's assume that the populist vote goes towards a Republican under some crazy, upside down world gets flipped upside down again. The table is flipped and the game resets on the other side of the spectrum. Will you still stand by that law? Is that something you think you want to do? I guarantee you that individual wasn't thinking about that, because that's the only way that he considers that their state is going to go Democrat, is by having all of their electoral college votes go to whoever wins the national popular vote. And the reason why I also mentioned Washington in this is because the governor of Washington has also passed a law in which will remove, possibly, Donald Trump and any of the other Republican candidates from their ballots, meaning you can only vote Democrat. Now, the last time that I remember this happening, we called these things Jim Crow laws. And Jim Crow laws were considered unconstitutional due to the fact that it prevented black people from voting for for the candidate that they considered under the guise of, well, we're doing what's in your best interest. It's something to it's a very interesting time right now, and to think we're not even through the third month of this year and it's already been a complete and utter roller coaster ride. I mean, in January, in February, it's incredible to think about all of the things that have happened and how public the war on men and boys has become. The war on individual citizens and their ability to have any kind of life outside of what the regressives want. Now, what does this have to do with MGTOW? I'm sure that, I've ranted long enough about this stuff. What does this have to do with us? Well, these people want to attack us. They want to use Christchurch, and they want to use voting, and they want to use these very underhanded bills and laws in an attempt to further subvert society, so that way they can go ahead and deplatform, attack, and jail men who do not comply with them, because they're not going to jail women. They're not going to attack women, because women will side with them. And even if they don't side with them, it doesn't matter. You're just a woman. Who cares what you think? You're not woke enough. Now, men who do not agree with them, men who have different opinions, and men who are not living their lives under the leftist woke narrative, those are dangerous, because they actually have the power to do something. And especially MGTOW men who do not place validation in society, men who do not place validation in the popular or the populist ideologues or men who do not really care exactly what is going on in these societies. Those are the dangers, because these men will not only just openly disregard you and openly state that no, you are wrong and I don't care what you think, but these men also will not follow the narrative. We will not subvert ourselves to your narrative, because in MGTOW we are all our own kings. Create a land of kings. Every MGTOW man should be striving to make himself his own king. You have your own sovereignty, your own property, your own rights, liberties, and lands. Make it yours. Now, this is a dangerous concept, because in the age of groupthink, individuals are the most dangerous thing to possibly come into contact with these groups. Why? Because they can sway the group into having, maybe not everyone, but one or two of these men that are willfully following along, these soy-laden estrogen soy boys who have that inkling thought in the back of their minds. This is not how I should act. This is not how I should think. This is not right. Those are the men that our words will reach, and those are the men that we will teach through the videos that we create, the lessons of MGTOW, and these things that we preach in practice. Those will draw men away from their lines. They can't have that. And I do believe that they're going to use Christchurch to go ahead and deplatform a majority of MGTOW content creators, if not all of them. Any red pill content creators as well. Because lest the truth be known, let it be silenced, so that way we can have our 16-year-olds vote. Let it be silenced so we can bring an age of darkness upon society and humanity, and further indoctrinate civilizations with feminist, gynocentric values, so that way they will never question the roles that they play in life and reality. Let them be further indoctrinated in our poison. I do thoroughly believe that this is exactly what they're going to use this for. Now, the response to that can vary. Either this will be another situation where you're going to have guys that say, oh, this is going to be civil war this time and nothing happens again, or this may very well be the time where a civil war does actually break out, does actually occur. This might be where the line is drawn and people have had enough. I do not know, because any conjecture that I can make, honestly, in complete honesty here, it depends upon every individual. And especially when it comes to MGTOW men, I do not recommend an act of action or violence. What I recommend now is wait and see. See what our opportunities are, and do your own cost-benefit analysis and make the move that you have to make, or the move that you think is the best move for you. I recommend ghosting at this point. However, this might be actually the time where that is not a viable action. And this might be the time where they start passing laws to bring the culture war further into reality. Because make no mistake about it, the culture war is moving into reality. It is no longer on the internet. It is coming to our lives, our physical reality, and in the world around us. And this is something we need to be watching for. Now, whatever you personally do, make sure it is the best action you can make at that time. But I will not condone any violence, and I will not condone any action that any terrorism or anything like that. These are not actions I am recommending, nor am I endorsing them. What I am saying, however, is if it comes down to the point where your self-protection is no longer viable through ghosting, make the best decision you can and keep yourself as much out of trouble as possible. In all essence, though, it comes down to the point where when the decision has to be made, when the lines are finally drawn, when enough is finally enough, who knows when exactly that point may be, but I do definitely think that this has become the catalyst, exactly what that individual wanted. This is exactly turning into everything that he wanted. And that's horrifying. So and especially with the revigored attacks on men and boys right now, because yes, this is carried on into attacks on men and boys. See how violent these men are. See how radicalized red pills are. See how unbelievably toxic this community is. See the incels and their hatred. We need to silence them and attack them. Yes, that's exactly what you need to do. Attack men who are minding their own business. Attack incels who literally, are being attacked all the time already, either by their own community or by PUAs. Continue to slam men who have been attacked all their lives, because within my living memory, all 2 decades of it so far, it's been a consistent and nonstop attack on men and boys. Keep attacking. This is not going to be the first time this happens, nor will it be the last, if this continues. So if anyone, and this is if anyone on the left has gone ahead and listened to this, I heavily doubt that. If you're listening to this right now, you know what the answer to this is? Stop this. This madness has run its course. It is enough. No more. Have sense. Have decency. Bring this madness to its end. That there's really no other action here. Any other action will result in further violence. So, because it's not going to be MGTOW men, it's not going to be good men, it's going to be men that have been pushed around all of their lives and they've had enough. And honestly, I think that is a sorrowful thought to have. It's sad that these men have been pushed to the point where they don't think of any other answer but this. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this right now. I've said my piece. I've put my 2 cents in there. If you guys have any comments or further topics or suggestions that you want to go ahead and put in there, please put it in the comment section. But really, I find it's very sad, this entire situation and the path that these individuals are trying to lead the entire world down. It is an age of darkness and insanity, and there will be no peace if this continues. So, in any case, to leave this on a happier note, it is St. Patrick's Day. I do heavily recommend that if you are listening right now, go ahead and enjoy the reveille, the holiday itself. It's a good holiday. St. Patrick is a very good patron saint, the patron saint of drinking and joy and other fun things, even though the official title for him is something entirely different. If you look at his history, I do very much argue that he is the patron saint of drinking. So in St. Patrick's name, I have a drink, and to you, gentlemen, cheers to a further week of happiness and success for us all, and hopefully this next week is a little less crazy and a little less sad. But in all, this is your average Joe reminding you, be your own king, create your own island, and remember, it's coming to reality, and at some point we all have to make decisions. I hope that we all make the right ones.